Now, the clash of constitutional interpretations is back with a vengeance in Nigeria, an interpretation which for some could leave the National Assembly fatally compromised in the eyes of many people. And for many constitutional lawyers, the use of a voice vote on a matter as crucial as emergency rule is a major breach. One of them, writing on social media, said that if you saw the outcome of the vote today in both the red and green chambers, you'd be forgiven for thinking that a moral cancer is starting to eat away at the very fabric of the rule of law in this country. Another pointed out that there couldn't have been a better case study in hypocrisy, double standards, and inconsistency, where the constitutional requirement of a resolution supported by a two-thirds majority of all the members of each house of the National Assembly was replaced by a voice vote. How much more can the National Assembly do to delegitimize itself in the eyes of the law and of the electorate who voted them into office, he asked. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the political and development analyst, Jake Epelle, founder of TAF Africa, who's from Opobo town in Rivers State, where Governor Fubara comes from. And I'm also joined on the line from Yenagoa by the president of the Youth Council Worldwide, Jonathan Lokpobiri. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me start with you, Mr. Epelle. You're from Rivers State, and many people there have described this imposition of emergency rule as unjust and even dangerous. What do you stand on that?
Thank you, Charles. I think I would like to describe it in the following terms. The day that the president pronounced this unconstitutional emergency, state of emergency, I would describe it as a sad day for democracy. I would also go ahead to describe today as the saddest day for democracy, because the House of Assembly, who had the impetus, the mandate of the people to defend the people, today denigrated us. They totally, absolutely disregarded us and did not live up to expectation. They didn't stand up to save democracy. It is a saddest day for democracy. That's my opening statement.
And I can hear that sadness very clearly in your voice, and I suspect that that is also the way that a lot of other people feel in Nigeria. Not everyone, of course, because, I mean, there are different sides to the story. But let me come to you, Mr. Lokpobiri in Yenagoa. You're in the Niger Delta region. You were in Port Harcourt earlier today, and now you are in Yenagoa. What sense do you get of how the people in that region are reacting to today's development? Is there surprise, anger, bewilderment?
Well, Charles, thank you for having me. First, I'm speaking from a position of dual roles in the Niger Delta. One, I am president of the Joint Council. Secondly, I'm also chairman of the Niger Delta Ethnic Nationalities Youth Leaders Forum. So I have two roles in the same Niger Delta, but speaking first as president of the Joint Council, my heart bleeds, and the Niger Delta people weeps for what happened day before yesterday and today. To start with the presidential declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, of course, nobody questions the power of the president to intervene, especially in areas where there is conflict or danger or any attempt to secure Nigeria from aggression and all of that as prescribed by the Constitution. But in the present circumstance, we're all choked at the speed with which the declaration was made, and then sadly, the swearing in of a military administrator, even before the parliament eventually ratified this declaration. So first, our democracy is highly placed on trial. And for me, I worry. I'm coming from a position of concern beyond just being president of IYC. This is a democracy that we still call nascent. So if actions of government aimed at solving a problem aggravates the problem and tension in the land, then it calls for worry. Why? If the president who has the power to intervene had intervened in peaceful political solution to an issue, and while Pandef and other members of society who are concerned about the degenerating situation in this conflict, and then, boom, we heard a declaration that totally terminates the tenure of an elected governor and a deputy governor who practically had no role in the conflict itself, been sacked without any consideration. It calls for worry. And as much as we know that the president had the power, did the Constitution envisage that under a quarrel or a disagreement between two political family that now are opponents, is it enough to totally sack a democratically elected House of Assembly and then that of the executive completely, and then imposing a military administrator on the people of Rivers State?
Right, okay.
Two things are eminent in this.
Right. Well, let me just come in there and let me just point out that, I mean, I think you're pretty much, you've pretty much laid out the points very succinctly, but let's just be clear that the governor and his deputy have not been sacked. They've been suspended, although you could make the argument, as some people have made, that by removing them from their offices, you've essentially taken away the vote that was given to them by the fiat of the electorate. But also, let me come to you, Jake, because I think Jonathan made some very good points there. Is there a sense that this crisis should have been resolved well before it got to the stage of imposing a state of emergency?
Charles, absolutely. If Mr. President, whom I so respect, I have in many fora tried to defend some of his policies. And I do that, with good intention, because he's someone that I know has been compassionate towards the poor. That said, is it possible that this could have been resolved? Yes. If he had played the neutrality, if he had been neutral, as a leader, as the father of the nation, if he had been able to look both parties in the eyes and said, my son, you're wrong. My son, you're wrong. That was not the case, Charles. It was one-sided. His decisions, his actions, his proclamation was absolutely one-sided. It looks to me like he was protective of the FCT minister.
Well, I mean, he would argue that he wasn't, but I think you're on the right track in the sense that it is all about perception, and the perception is that it is one-sided.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt about that. A document was put together, and the young man was forcefully, as far as I'm concerned, in my own opinion, asked to sign, and he signed. And it's interesting to mention something that is in that document that is evidential that indeed these 27 lawmakers that have created this political logjam have actually defected. Number 3, if you have it, you can show your audience. Number 3, it was said that Governor Sim Alai will recognize these lawmakers as having defected from PDP to APC. Guess who signed that document? Wike signed that document. Guess who signed that document? Ameule signed that document. Guess who signed that document? All the elders, all the people who signed it, including Siminalai. That's enough concrete evidence that indeed, because this is at the heart of the issue, okay? The defection is at the heart of the issue. Yet, it is very disheartening that this document came out of the presidency, and yet people came out openly to argue, lie through their teeth that these guys never defected. That's very worrisome. Now, my point here is, look, Charles, we're here. Let me use this opportunity, look through the lens of your camera, and ask my people, every Rivers person, the youth, the elderly, we are resilient people. We are courageous. We are civilized people. We must not take to anything that will disrupt peace, law, and order. When they go low, we go high. Remain steadfast, knowing fully well that one day justice will take its course. Mr. President, remember, you once left this country in the spirit of preserving the democracy. One day you came back, and today you are the president. Who knows? The people that are being marginalized today, my people that have been tossed aside, we are the one producing the resources that is taking care of everybody, including those in Aso Rock, and yet we are treated as minority of the minority. Let's be careful. This is how issues like this can ferment issues that can run out of hand. But God forbid, the average Rivers man is a peace-loving person, and we will remain peaceful.
And that's a very powerful statement that you made there, and I'm actually glad that you did, because you expressed, I think, in very sort of emotional but very clear language what I suspect a lot of people, possibly in the Niger Delta in general and in River State in particular, are feeling right now. Let me come to you, Jonathan Lokpobiri in Yenagoa. I don't know if you were listening to Jake Epelle there, but in terms of the issue of injustice, which he talked about, is there a sense that only the governor and his deputy were punished in this conflict, and that the other person in this crisis got away scot-free, and that perhaps all this is aimed at making some sort of political capital out of it?
Well, while I do not want to clearly state that, it's quite obvious. As far as the average Nigerians, especially people in the Niger Delta and the entire region, they believe that victory was handed over to one and one was punished for it. But like I said, the Ijaw people and the people of the Niger Delta have shown respect and restraint in this provocative adventure occasioned by this proclamation of state of emergency in Rivers State. I'm glad that the governor also at least handled this quite maturely. If it were some people, whether military is in place, they would have rather died than to surrender a mandate so freely given to him by the people of Rivers State. I'm not speaking just as a Ijaw man, but I'm speaking as a concerned Niger Delta youth leader that is concerned for the peace of our region. Now, people can act that they acted in an attempt to restore law and order. Let me say this. Law and order in society is established simply to enthrone justice. Whenever law and order fails to provide justice, it only becomes a dangerously structured dam that blocks the way of people's social progress. Now, in the current circumstance, this is what Nigerians feel. It's not just about Rivers people, it's not just about Niger Delta people. This is what Nigeria feels today. And because we have immense respect for the president of our country, sometimes it's important to acknowledge that we have acted either in error and then correct this so that our democracy grows stronger. In the current state, our democracy is put on trial, and if nothing is done to mitigate this tomorrow, it could breed chaos. Some of the issues that have led to violent clashes in the north. Remember, in time past, Goodluck was president, and a scenario where real insecurity was the bane of governance in Borno State, in Yobe and Adamawa, the president in his intervention attempted to declare a state of emergency. But of course, wisdom prevailed that it was no offense of the governors in particular. A martial law was proclaimed, but the military were to work hand in hand with the civilian authorities to restore peace and normalcy in those states. Why was the case so different in Rivers State?
Okay, let me come in
or
there.
Was it that Sim committed a sin that was unforgivable?
Right. That's a point that, obviously one can't answer on this program. But I'm going to try and lighten things just a little because, I mean, it's very heavy discussion and an important discussion, of course. But just to lighten things a little, you know the way social media operates, they're already turning all this in a kind of mirthful direction, and we're suddenly having terms coming out describing the three characters in this crisis. They're describing wicked Wike and terrible Tinubu and sleepy Sim, which kind of makes it a little bit interesting. But to kind of move on towards a potential solution. I wonder, Jake, if you are encouraged by the decision by the National Assembly to set up a committee of respected, eminent Nigerians to try and settle this political crisis as soon as possible.
That's okay. If truly there is sincerity of purpose, I hope we won't find puppets as members of this committee. It doesn't matter what name they bear. I mean, they can be Rivers, and they can also be Northerners in Rivers clothing, and all that. If there is a sincerity of purpose and the people are neutral and the people are courageous, we can find a political solution. But then, if you look at it the other way around, the law have been tilted, and if not dented, and now you want to bring a political solution or cultural or traditional solution. That should have been the first thing first. It should have been the actions of the president. I expected that the president should have called the governor. It doesn't matter if the governor didn't call him. We've seen the US president do that. We saw Biden do that, even when the Republican governors were not willing to even talk to him. Biden left messages, So there's nothing wrong with a leader. And Charles, I wish I had time to talk about leadership, the traits and characters of leadership. This is what leadership is all about. It's about being able to reach the unreached. It's about making the small feel great in your presence, and not trying to use a sledgehammer, you understand? And you're using a sledgehammer to beat an ant. It doesn't make sense. So I had expected him to have called Sim, look, my son, this is what is happening. What do you have to say? Can you come to Abuja? I want to see you. Look, this military that we're using right now that are intimidating my people, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be. We want peace. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. However, I got a call, and I don't want to mention the name of the young lady. The children are crying. I have cousins, I have brothers who are not safe. They don't feel safe. How? So I wish we had divided into three these might and put them there to stem the tide of trouble and leave the elected officials to function.
Well, talking about safety, and that's obviously a very important thing that Jake was referring to there. Jonathan, we know that what led to this, according to the president, was what appeared to be the rumblings of disquiet, which appeared to be heading towards violence with the explosion of that pipeline. How do you assess that conclusion, given that you preside over the Ijaw Youth Council? And let's face it, I mean, some of the threats of violence seem to be coming from the youths in the Niger Delta.
Well, Charles, to be quite honest, the Ijaw Youth Council that I'm leading today is a social, cultural organization that advocates for the good and advancement of the Ijaw cause. But because we live in the midst of other ethnic groups who have extended that big brother relationship with every other ethnic groups, and the IYC at no time will encourage violence, especially on installations that we have so worked hard to restore hope and normalcy, so that the oil can flow out of the region just as it has always been done. But I can tell you for free that what happened in Ogoniland, which the president premised his action or relied upon in punishing Sim. Let me play a scenario. What if Sim's enemies, because there are threats from Ijaw people and Niger Delta people who are aggrieved by what is going on, and then his enemy go to set up a fire, and then because the president may not know, or Nigerian intelligence may not have revealed what happened, and then the man is punished. Now, from the Arise TV's intervention, we have clearly seen that it was a well-prepared, orchestrated arrangement just to ignite or justify whatever was planned. I can tell you for free that Sim had no hand in that. But like I said, two wrongs cannot make a right. And the Ijaw people, the youths of the Niger Delta, were always trying to dissuade violent, because destructive means can't give any constructive hand.
Okay, we're almost out of time.
We believe that genuine interventions can resolve this issue.
Okay, we're almost out of time. Jake, a final word from you. What do you think will happen next?
Can I weigh in?
Very briefly, we've got literally 1 minute.
Yes, Jonathan and I and the president of Ijaw Nation, the three of us had a phone call today, and three of us have agreed we are going to do everything possible to make sure that peace reigns. You know, and we will continue to do that. You know, I know we don't have time, Charles. I want to really thank you and thank the Arise team for standing up and giving Nigerians the truth. And I want to challenge the federal government. If you know that Sim did anything, unclassify your findings and let the whole world see that he is responsible. Okay. I, Jake Epelle, will be the first to condemn him.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed for your robust contributions this evening. Jake Epelle is the founder of TAF Africa. He's from Opobo town in Rivers State, where Governor Fubara comes from. He's also a political and development analyst, and also on the line from Yenagoa, the president of the Ijaw Youth Council Worldwide, Jonathan Lokpobiri. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Yenagoa, bye-bye and thank you for watching.